Welcome back, Seekers, to another explainer. Today, we're embarking on a truly profound journey into the classical wisdom of an ancient text known as the Yoga Vasistha. Specifically, we are diving deep into the dense, fascinating philosophical landscape of Canto 9. Think of this canto as a meticulous, ancient manual for the human mind, completely designed to shatter our deepest misconceptions about life. So clear your mind, settle in, and let's explore the ultimate nature of existence together.
Right off the bat, I want to ask you a question. Is the world you see actually real, or is it merely a projection of your mind? Now, the Yoga Vasistha boldly claims that this entire physical universe, with all its solid-seeming objects and urgent day-to-day dramas, is not the ultimate reality. No, it says it's actually a magnificent, highly convincing mental projection. Stick with me here because we're going to trace the airtight logic used by ancient sages to prove exactly why this is the case.
To get us from confusion to absolute clarity, here is our sequential roadmap for today. First, the illusion of reality. Then, defining consciousness and Maya. Next, the dimensions of time and space. After that, parables of the mind. Then, the logic of renunciation. And finally, attaining salvation.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the illusion of reality, deconstructing the material world.
The core conflict in Canto 9 begins with our fundamental spiritual blindness. The text calls this avidya, which translates to spiritual ignorance. Now, the text makes it incredibly clear that this is not a lack of worldly education. You could possess vast academic knowledge, have 5 PhDs, and still be completely trapped in avidya. It is specifically the inability to perceive the ultimate reality, known as Brahman, the pure, unchanging consciousness that exists just behind the physical curtain of our everyday world. Because of avidya, our minds perpetually mistake this temporary physical world for the ultimate reality. And because of that, we end up anchoring our entire sense of self to things that are, frankly, destined to decay.
Moving on to Section 2, defining consciousness and Maya, the veil over reality.
So, how exactly does this ignorance actively manifest in our lives? Well, in Canto 9, verse 6, we encounter a totally crucial concept called taratnya yasa. This translates literally to false identification. The verse explains that pure, infinite consciousness completely forgets its true nature and mistakenly identifies with the physical body and the fluctuating mind. Think of it like this. Imagine an incredibly talented actor who gets so lost in playing a deeply tragic character on stage that they actually start to believe they are that character, suffering all that fictional grief in their real life. That is exactly the state of the soul under Maya, the cosmic illusion. It is falsely identified with the character of the ego.
This brings us to a really grand divide. On one hand, you have the physical dimension. That's the character you're playing. It's temporary, strictly bound by the laws of time and space, and it's entirely rooted in Maya. But on the other hand, you have the consciousness dimension. This is who you actually are. It's eternal, completely timeless, and rooted in the absolute reality of Brahma. Canto 9 basically implores the seeker, that's us, to stop validating the temporary physical realm and start waking up to our eternal consciousness.
Let's explore that further in Section 3, Dimensions of Time and Space, the Ghataka. To explain the multidimensional theories of space and time, verse 6 introduces one of the most famous classical analogies, the Ghataka. The verse states, Yatha Ghatakasho, which translates to, just as the space bounded within a clay pot is Ghatakash, the limitless infinite universe outside is Mahakash. Physically, those clay walls seem to trap and separate the space inside from the limitless space outside, right? But think about it. If you move the pot from one room to another, the space inside itself doesn't actually move. And most importantly, when that clay pot finally breaks, the space inside doesn't suddenly merge with the outside. It was literally never separated to begin with.
The illusion of separation was created entirely by the walls of the pot. And here is the profound spiritual meaning the text provides for this. The space within the pot is not different from the universal space. So too, the individual soul is non-different from the supreme consciousness. That pot is your physical body, existing in the dimensions of time and space. Pure consciousness, however, is entirely free of them. Your individual soul doesn't need to travel anywhere to become one with the universe. It already is the universe.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Parables of the Mind, the Ignorant Child.
In verse 7, we are given a fantastic story used by ancient gurus to teach their disciples about the mind's trickery, the parable of the ignorant child. The verse states, Balo Vatalam, meaning just as a child imagines a ghost in the dark. Picture a young child standing in a dark room. They look into the shadows and completely project a terrifying ghost lurking there. Now, the child's physiological reaction, the pounding heart, the sweating, the genuine agonizing terror, all of that is entirely real. But the cause of the suffering, the ghost itself, is completely non-existent. The exact moment a light is turned on, realization instantly dispels the phantom. Canto 9 uses this to explain our own lives. Our minds invent the phantom of the ego, causing us very real suffering over something that literally does not exist. And just like flipping a switch, the light of knowledge makes it vanish.
So what do we do about this? That's section 5, the logic of renunciation, letting go of the ghost.
If the ego is just a ghost in the dark causing us needless suffering, the logical next step is tyaga, or true renunciation. Now listen closely, because classical renunciation is not at all about running away to live in a cave in the forest or merely throwing away your physical possessions. That's just physical renunciation, and frankly, it's useless if your mind remains unchanged. True tyaga is psychological. It is the internal, mental letting go of tadatmya ajasa, abandoning those false mental constructs and desires of the ego. It's about existing right here in the world, without allowing false constructs to dictate your inner peace.
The text gives us a beautiful, chronological progression for a soul moving from deep ignorance toward ultimate liberation. Step 1. Recognize avidya. Basically, admit that you are standing in a dark room. Step 2. Study the nature of Brahman. Turn on the light of knowledge through deep inquiry. Step 3. Practice mental renunciation. Stop feeding the ghost. Stop engaging with the ego's endless petty demands. And finally, Step 4. Shatter the pot of the ego and realize your boundless, limitless nature.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, Attaining Final Salvation, the State of True Freedom.
So what actually happens when the illusion is finally pierced? Well, the ultimate goal of Canto 9 is something called Jivan Mukti, which means liberation while living. A Jivan Mukta is someone who has attained final salvation, but, and this is key, they remain actively in the physical world. They go to work, they speak with their friends, they walk the earth, but they are no longer entangled by its illusions. They live fully, freely, and joyfully, knowing with absolute certainty that they are the infinite supreme space, simply observing the play of the physical pots around them.
This epic journey of consciousness unfolds in phases. Phase 1 is being bound by Maya. Honestly, this can take lifetimes of believing the illusion, of suffering the ghost in the dark. Phase 2 requires years of actively seeking knowledge, studying profound texts like the Yoga Vasistha, and practicing that mental renunciation. But Phase 3, attaining Jivan Mukti, that isn't a length of time at all. It is the sudden realization of the eternal now. It's stepping completely outside the dimensions of time and space.
To beautifully summarize the entirety of Canto 9, we have this profound quote to reflect on. When the mind is free from the illusion of duality, the entire universe is seen as the self. Once you truly realize there is no separation, there's no you versus the world, no inside the pot versus outside the pot, there is only peace. Everything is an extension of your true self. And this realization perfectly sets the stage for the deeper meditative practices we'll be exploring when we dive into Canto 10.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of philosophical ground today. I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. If this ancient wisdom is correct, and your reality is indeed a mental projection, what will you choose to project today? Will you project the fearful, suffering ghost of the ego, or the limitless, peaceful reality of your true self? Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.